Guinevere traced the seams of her new outfit. Though she couldn't be sure with the lack of mirrors within the clock tower, she was certain that she looked ridiculous. The leather outfit was warm, and clung lovingly to her voluptuous form. Although it was a little loose on her in places, being a male's ensemble. For a long while, she pondered whether or not she should really wear such a thing. But Garrett had said that it would help her blend into her surroundings better, and she certainly didn't want to disappoint him. Guinevere finally sat back down atop her place on the stairway. She glanced over at Garrett. The thief was still resting, his snoring barely audible amidst the loud cranking of gears and the haunting wind that echoed throughout the empty rafters of the tower. Thinking back on it, the young woman wondered how she had been able to find sleep in such a place. Or rather how her mentor had been sleeping here for years. At least, she assumed it had been years. Guinevere really didn't know anything about Garrett, and it seemed to her that he intended to keep it that way. She began tracing the seams on her pant leg, wondering when he would awaken. She had never been very good at entertaining herself, and was often bored as a result.
I should probably try to sleep during the day next time, like Garrett. That way, I won't be bored and lonely.
She told herself. It would be quite an adjustment, but one that she had to make. If her mentor wasn't there to teach her anything, staying awake at normal hours seemed a moot point.
And besides, I'm not normal anymore.
She whispered softly.
Not that I ever was.
As the day waned on, the young woman struggled to resist the urge to wake her host. She had never sat idly by for so long before. Back at the Simmons Manor, there was always something to do, someone to entertain her. But now she had to adapt, and make her own fun. Reflecting back on her life at the manor caused a bittersweet feeling to envelop her heart. She had been so innocent at first. While Garrett constantly judged her according to her past, never letting her forget that she was indeed wealthy. The truth of the matter was that Guinevere had learned long ago that she was nothing special. She closed her eyes and began to smile. At least not in terms of hierarchy or wealth. Guinevere had very vivid recollections of her mother, despite the fact that she had died when the young woman was only 2 years old. After her mother's passing, which, Guinevere had always been told, was a suicide, her father had taken it upon himself to finish raising her. But rather than out of parental affection, he had done so out of duty, out of a selfish and unbridled lust for her power. For as long as she could remember, that strange power had always flowed through her. And it was a power that served Vladimir Simmons' hope to one day harness, whatever the cost. Perhaps that was the reason she had initially begun using her powers to help others. Her mother had always been a lover of nature and of life. Guinevere was very much the same way. She wanted to help those less fortunate than herself. She wanted to change things. But with her father around, that simply wasn't a possibility. Within her life of luxury, Guinevere's existence was confined to a prison of chains and darkness. A hidden dungeon which had only gotten drearier after her failed attempt to help. That man.
A lot of good your help did. Now he's dead because of you.
Guinevere's voice quaked, and she silently broke down. A pair of lone ravens were the only souls to witness her weeping. or were they? The busy day faded into a chilly and foggy night. Making final preparations, Garrett finished sharpening the last of his arrows for departure. Guinevere hadn't moved from her spot on the stairs, and she watched him work with absorbent eyes. She decided to try and make conversation.
So, who is this person? Besso's mate, I mean.
How should I know? All he told me was that we were to meet him tonight.
But I thought you said that you recently stole something for him.
Guinevere asked, confused.
I did.
You steal things for people without knowing them? Or what they're going to use said items for?
She cocked her head.
My, that seems a bit reckless of you.
I steal so that I can get paid. Nothing more, nothing less.
Garrett sneered.
I'd like to hear a better reason.
How about to help those less fortunate than yourself?
Garrett glowered down at her in a bemused fashion.
Odd words coming from a little rich girl.
That's what I did. That's why I stole that gem I told you and Basso about. To help a friend of mine.
Seems like there's more to that story than you're telling, Guinevere.
There is. But why should I tell you about myself when you're so blunt and vague when I ask you questions?
She retorted, acting coy. Garrett placed the last of his arrows into the black leather quiver.
Now you're getting it. A good thief never gets involved with other people's problems. Getting involved leads to empathy. And feelings can get you into a lot of trouble.
He slung the quiver over his back and fastened the belt across his chest.
Lesson 4. Be detached and never take a job that's either sentimental or personal.
He pulled the black cotton mask up over his mouth and nose. Guinevere stood. It was time to go. Garrett gave her new outfit a once-over. She was wearing an old leather uniform of his. And while he regretted to lend her such a nostalgic piece of his legacy, it was better than getting them both spotted on account of that ostentatious blue tramp skirt of hers. The leather clung to her bosoms and thighs, remaining rather loose in all other areas. Guinevere had also pulled her long hair back into a crude bun, strands of auburn falling messily down the sides of her face. She looked up at him, with nervous green eyes. From behind the confines of his mask, the thief actually smiled.
That looks much better.
He commented, his voice muffled.
Lesson 5. Dark colors tend to attract less attention at night. Remember what I told you earlier about blending into your surroundings? This will help tremendously. But we still really need to work on your stealth and agility. Understood?
His eyes focused on her intent expression. So, that was why Basso and Garrett wore such dark clothing. When she had first come to the slums, she had known so very little. But now, under Garrett's firm yet wise guidance, she was beginning to slowly understand what it took to survive down here. Guinevere nodded gleefully.
Understood.
She agreed.
Good. Then let's go.
Basso was waiting for them outside of the crippled barrack when they arrived. He smiled at Guinevere, holding out his arms.
Hey, there's my gal. Nice outfit you got on. I like the other one better, though.
He winked. Guinevere smiled, completely missing the hint of flirtation.
Oh, thanks. But Garrett says I should try and look more like a thief and less like a lady of the evening. Which I don't get. Don't thieves come out at night anyway?
She cocked her head. Basso gaped and he burst out into a dirty chuckle.
They're not the only ones, kiddo.
Leaning over, he gave Garrett a bemused look.
Did you really say that?
Garrett remained stationary, although Guinevere was sure she heard him groan under his breath.
I'm learning a lot from Garrett, actually. Pretty soon, I'll be able to steal all on my own,
she proclaimed.
Don't count on it.
Garrett murmured. The boxman began to chuckle.
By the way, I have a personal assignment for you.
Oh?
Guinevere asked.
Try to teach this tougher a thing or two about humor, huh?
Basso nudged his companion. Garrett was not amused.
Alright, Basso. Who is this guy, and why does he want to meet with me?
Garrett interrupted impatiently. Basso turned and looked at him.
Perhaps it's your cheerful personality.
Be serious, Basso. I'm not here to make nice with strangers.
The thief pointed to Guinevere.
You already forced me to do that once. Never again.
Alright. Sheesh.
Basso began walking, Garrett and Guinevere trailing behind.
Why don't you just ask him yourself?
He stopped short in front of a splintered wooden door. Turning around, he looked Guinevere up and down.
What is it?
She asked.
Garrett, could you maybe let the little lady borrow your cloak? We don't need people recognizing her down here. Could be trouble.
Garrett sighed and reluctantly removed his cloak. Passing it to Guinevere, the young woman affixed the hood over her head, allowing the remaining black material to taper down her body. Basso stepped back, nodding approval.
Yeah, that'll do. Just keep your face hidden and let Uncle Basso do all the talking.
He grinned.
Can we please just get this over with? I still don't see the point of all this.
Garrett grumbled. Basso pointed a dirty finger, giving the thief a stern look.
You will. This could be a very lucrative opportunity. So please, I'm begging you, Garrett. Try to be less you and more like Gwen here. We need this.
Without waiting for his mate to reply, Basso pounded upon the strange door. A slit in the top opened, and a shady-looking man appeared within. The man looked warily from Basso to Garrett, and then the door clicked open.
Basso.
A proud yet mild voice called out as soon as the party had entered. Guinevere looked up to see a middle-aged man with a short beard walking towards them. Her heart nearly stopped. She knew him. But the question remained. Would he recognize her?
Ryan, I brought Garrett just as you asked.
Basso remarked. The man, known as Orion, nodded at the thief.
Garrett.
That's when he noticed Guinevere. The young woman struggled frantically to keep her face hidden from him.
Oh? Who's this then?
The man walked closer and peered into the darkness that concealed her face. Mystical green and yellow eyes met his, and even as she turned away, Guinevere knew that it was already far too late. Orion had seen her face.
Oh, yes. Allow me to introduce,
Basso thought for a second, and the spark of inspiration hit him.
my cousin's mute daughter, Bethany.
Garrett shook his head, rubbing his temples. Orion smirked.
Well met, Lady Bethany.
He bowed. Guinevere still refused to look at him.
Family is very important. Very important.
Am I getting paid for this?
Garrett finally spoke up.
Shh, Garrett.
Basso shushed him. Orion's eyes widened.
My apologies, Master Thief. It is such an honor to finally have you here. My kudos and thanks on getting that ring for me.
That's what I do.
Indeed. You are indeed gifted in your trade. That's what I wanted to talk to you about.
You have another job for me then?
Come with me. I'll tell you all about it.
Orion motioned for the thief to follow him.
All right. I'll I'll just leave you three alone then.
Barso remarked.
3.
Orion asked, looking at Guinevere again.
Well, yes. My cousin's daughter won't leave Garrett's side. She tends to get a little unruly without him.
Oh, I see.
Orion stroked his chin. Garrett rolled his eyes.
Very well then, Bethany. Please, follow along.
Guinevere did as she was bade, keeping pace behind her mentor. Upon closer inspection, the young woman noticed that the area had been transformed into a makeshift hospital, and was full of sickly people. Children to elders all lay upon filthy cots, suffering from a variety of afflictions, although most notably, the dreaded gloom. Guinevere felt a twinge of guilt as she continued past. Her magic protected her from sickness, and could possibly even be used to cure some of these victims. Some part of her wanted to stay and aid these people, but she also didn't want to reveal herself, especially with Orion around. If she did that, then even Garrett would not be able to help her.